Hey, Axe Hounds! Welcome back to the Axe Hounds podcast. The podcast literally just about axes. And Chris is here with me, and I'm Leaf, of course, if you're just tuning in for the first time. And this is a slightly impromptu podcast, although we do have a direction of discussion, and we're calling it Against the Grain, which is obviously going to be about handles, not just chopping wood. Our synopsis for this episode is really loose, but part of it's going to bridge off of the Myths and Malarkey episode, the last one, about the state of handles today as axe users and restorers. And then we'll bridge into a few other topics. And we actually have some very interesting, what would that be, media from, I would call it the golden age. I think we could agree on that, of axe manufacturing.
Yeah, definitely.
How an axe company who made handles, how many different grades they had, and the description of those grades compared to what we see that's out there today. And before that, I have a meet coming up on March 30th, just a week and a half away. And it's just for axes. And this is an open invite to anybody. Chris will be coming up. There's a lot of other people coming up, and it's just whatever you want it to be. I'll provide coffee, possibly some snacks around lunchtime. If you want anything bigger than that, you'll probably have to pack that. But otherwise, you'll have full use of my tools. I have a few vices. I have clamps. People want to work on something, get help with problems they're having, maybe learn how to grind an edge without ruining it. And just think of those basic skills. There'll be some historical pieces here as far as the axe community is concerned. Some old heads, some things that aren't made anymore. Get a chance to look at some history and these kind of things that interest us. And at the moment, there's a couple blacksmiths coming as well. That's cool knowledge to, I think, be able to shoot the breeze about. And they are also axe makers, which is very cool. One just signed on. Well, didn't sign on. He's coming. He got the information this morning. He does some really nice work. I mean, and he asked what he should bring. I said, bring anything. Bring heads, bring work you've had. If you got a couple you want to sell, you can post up. I'll be happy to put them in videos and pictures or anything like that. And it's just a way for this community to network, because that's how some of my best scores have been made.
Definitely networking.
Yeah,
I just want to add to that, the combined experience that's going to be at this meet is just incredible. Like, this is a great opportunity for anybody just getting into the hobby to just pick the brains of some of the industry's lead dogs, really, for lack of better terms. I mean, also the opportunity to handle some of the rare pieces that Mike Miller would be bringing, just to see it in person it's a whole different level than seeing it on the internet. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. He's gonna have stuff that I'm gonna look at and then I'll never see again. I mean, I think that's just awesome. You know what I mean? Unless I see Mike again.
Right. Yeah. So the opportunity for someone just or even experienced people to come to this it's just incredible. I encourage everyone to try and make the trip out. It's a long drive for like Roy and me and Miller, but we all found a way to carpool up, and we're going to come together. And other people should do that. Get together with somebody close in your community and make the trip together. But
yeah, part of me considers that if I should have done a 2-day, and people show up during Saturday and here for part of Sunday too. But I think one day, if I get enough people and it seems to be enough interest, I'll probably schedule another one for mid-fall, before hunting. I'll try to get it before hunting season start.
I'm thinking I had one early spring, I guess late winter. We call it late winter.
Yeah,
just a few months ago, and I'm seriously thinking about doing one midsummer at my place in Ohio.
Perfect.
So if I do one midsummer again, I don't know. It was a fun time, and I know my wife and I enjoyed the company and the camaraderie. So look forward to that, staying Axe Hounds and keep up on the events.
Yeah, for some reason, if you're somebody who's catching this podcast because we mentioned on Instagram or something, Well, whether you're on Facebook or not, we run a peculiar group of axe collectors called Axe Hounds. It's a little different than some of the other larger ones. We definitely do things a little bit differently, and we're also, in my opinion, being a lot more creative with media out there, such as the podcast. We also have a YouTube channel now, which at the moment just podcasts are going up on, but I imagine that's going to change eventually here, hopefully this year with the summer. So I think anything axe related I'll also post up there.
I foresee future videos on YouTube, possibly some axe class videos and stuff like that. Maybe just break down each step and do a quick video on it, or like a tip, almost like when you're doing those memes, not memes.
Yeah, they're memes. Yeah, I believe you can call them memes, right? Yeah.
Maybe do a quick video just explaining each process or something, and getting those up on the Axe Hounds channel. I think that'd be good content for somebody to just, instead of sitting through a 20-30 minute long video, just a quick 3 to 5 minute video on, hey, this is how you set your head or set your wedge or whatever.
That's a very good idea. I didn't think about doing as many. That's a good idea. We should do that, because we can start it right away, especially with the meat. I mean, there's so much experience. Getting a few blurps of people talking about things they do or something would probably be good content for that.
And I think also we talked about, at the meet, we're gonna try and record another podcast.
Oh yeah, yep. And along with the meet, there's that too. Yep.
That'd be a good opportunity to see it live in action, and maybe even have a moment on there to speak your opinion about the hobby or whatever.
Yeah. I'll make it raw too. I'll just walk around with the DSLR. I think a few of us will gather together, and I'll just turn that into an MP3 for an impromptu podcast, because I can upload that easy. So look forward to that in a couple weeks, because I'll probably put it up on the following day. But cool. And with that too, some sponsors have stepped up to help the event, which is awesome. The first one to jump on was Red Label Abrasives, and I'm going to do them due diligence and just mention their name for the next, few podcasts in the media and stuff. They sponsored with some belts, a banner, shirts to give away, a hat, and some other things, like for nothing, just because they wanted to be part of it. So I think that was really cool. Axe Wax, Noah, I think it's Trieger, I think he's saying he donated some of his Axe Wax canisters to do his door prize. I'm going to do raffles for everybody. Thrain Axe and Saw Co. sent a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I must have a couple hundred, I don't know, maybe 100 wedges in them packs.
Wow.
And I think I'm going to bundle them up smaller so I can get more guys hit with getting prizes. He sent a whole bunch of t-shirts, and I think he did there's some other things in there. I kind of forgot. If you know the community, Bark Eater Ben, he's sending up some Rook coffee. So he's sponsoring the event with coffee because he couldn't make it out of Jersey for the meets. So, and whatever else happens between then. So I thought that was really cool. So it's worth mentioning now and a few more times for these guys. And with that, handles. And I think Chris made a good point on the last podcast about going with what you got, and maybe reiterate that fact if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, just don't
let a bridge.
Don't let the fact that you can't find a textbook handle stand in the way of you hanging an axe. It's not really that difficult of a job to hang an axe. So just do it. And, if you break the handle, well, then do it again. If you're I don't know, if you're in a situation where you're going to be out away from the world and you need that handle or that axe to perform the whole day, or you're going to be in a life or death situation. I don't know how many people are in that kind of, but I mean, if that's the case, maybe have a backup plan.
Yeah, right. Or know how to make another one. Yeah. No, I agree. And, my little quip is don't get into a safety Sally mentality. when it comes to that as well. Somebody picks the wrong grain handle, or you got a little hardwood mixture or something like that. The axe not going to explode and kill 10 people around you. I've broke handles. I'm pretty sure Chris has broke some handles. I've never been injured. I've never injured anybody else. The head's never gone fly and decapitated anybody. And don't get in that mentality.
I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, but the only failures that I've ever had are from overstrike.
Yeah, I think you did. Yep.
It's not one of those things where you overstrike it and it breaks the first time. It's after several times, and every time I took that axe out, I knew it was getting weaker, but I just took it out anyway. And then I don't think it ever actually failed completely. I think it's just the overstrike was so much. I got nervous about it. 300.
Mm-hmm.
And there are handles that snap, but they're not gonna.
I've had one, but
I've never heard of anybody getting seriously injured from a handle snapping.
Well, I'm sure somebody will have a story now that we put this out, but I mean that's anecdotal. Right. That's not a rule of thumb. I wouldn't bank my whole future on doing handle work on one guy's little incident, but don't.
With anything, take caution and be aware of your situation and maybe educate yourself before you use the tool.
I agree. And with that, guys, we still want nice handles. We still want to have a selection of quality, nice grain, good wood and all that stuff. And it kind of turns into the conversation of the state of handles today. And where Chris and I have come to, I think everybody who seriously gets into axes ends up at the same point. It's eventually at some point, I guess. There's a lot of guys who don't, but I don't know, at the level that we are into it, I suppose it always comes down to end up making your own, and I don't want this podcast to be a bash session, but let's be honest, the state of a lot of the handle companies, I guess to say a lot, let's be honest. At least some of the big standing ones like Link or something. I mean, the quality that we see out in the hardware stores and stuff is pretty poor. I mean, it's not the grain orientation or anything like that. It's literally the quality of the shape. The usability is poor.
It's a very general shape. Like they don't. There's no romance at all.
None. In fact, I go a bit further with that. It's to the point now that my selection so the only place I can get Link handles around here is my Ace Hardware. That's the only place that I have wood handles in this area. That's not counting those Ames or Troopers that you get from Lowe's or something. But they're just board cut and routed. But every Link handle I get here, if I went through 50, I'd probably find 2 that would actually fit it. So for instance, I've had my entire 36-inch handle inventory down at my local Ace here have necks and eyes the size of boys. So how does that happen? They're tiny little I couldn't even fill a full size eye with it, and then not to mention the kerf cut is completely off to one side. It's not even, it's like somebody didn't even try to make it even.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's there at that point, it's unusable. I'm not putting a 2-pound boy's head on a 36-inch haft. I don't have enough meat to work with to put a full-size axe on. And that's more often the state of that stuff that I find here. I know some other guys might get luckier, but that's got me to the point where I am now. It's like, well, I'll just start making my own, I don't know if you want to say anything on that.
Yeah, it's tough because I actually have a pretty good understanding of the handle making process now that I've been dealing with this my supplier, and it's been an interesting journey really because they're a smaller company and they've got their and that's been really successful. And the thing we run into is because I'm selling this handle on the internet, it has to be textbook perfect because that's what people are expecting. Because by the time you pay for the handle, add in shipping, you're paying a lot of money for a handle, so it better be right. And I get that. Like I don't have any problem with that. I'm trying to provide a better handle, and that's what people are getting. But with working with them, it's not really the handle manufacturer's fault. It's more of the wood supplier's fault, and it's not really their fault either. They're just trying to make money. So when they saw up these logs, they don't care what direction the grain's going. They're just making a 4-quarter board. And then the handle guy gets it and he's going to turn it into a handle. Well, he's at the mercy of whatever grain orientation the sawmill provided. So I think with the bigger companies, they just figure they'll sell them cheap and in mass quantities and not worry about the grain orientation. And where I'm working with these guys, they're only turning my handles out of the premium wood. They're not just turning handles to make handles. So we get fewer handles, but the quality is much better. And it's unfortunate. I mean, it's just the way it is. We don't have huge trees anymore that you can get perfectly straight grain out of. So you're kind of at the mercy of whatever is available. It is wood, it grows on its own. You can't really manufacture the grain. So, but there's things that we can do that are in our control, like the cutting of the kerf and the style and shape of the handle and the eye size and, their overall dimensions, all that stuff that the big companies overlook, making too thick of handles and there's no curve to it, or the fawn's foot's non-existent, or, that's the nice thing about working with these Amish is we're able to produce a sexier handle and at a higher quality. So, and there's other guys doing this, there's custom makers, and then there's other guy like Whiskey River. He's hand selecting premium handles and doing the same thing. So
yeah. And he's got some unique shapes too, right? I believe.
Yeah, I mean his Boys Axe handles are gorgeous. It's kind of his thing, and I think he actually worked with the company on that to produce that particular Boys Axe handle. So there's opportunities out there, guys. The only the downside is it's not $9 anymore or $12 anymore.
That's what it is. Yeah,
you're paying a lot more money for this handle, but then you gotta always look at it. Time is money. So if you have nothing but time, then make your own handle.
Make your own handle. That's kind of where this is coming to. Yep.
You go to the hardware store, pick out the wood. Good luck, because that in itself is a challenge. And then come home and make your own handle. But I mean, if you're trying to juggle, 2 full-time jobs and a family and events and stuff, like we're pretty busy people, making my own handle is not really an option all the time. So it's a whenever I have time to do it, and I have a lot of ambition.
Yeah, we got lots of that.
I don't have any time. So luckily we're in a time now where there's opportunities for everyone.
Yeah, it's the DIY, the maker market is just getting awesomer and awesomer. And now we are getting some opportunities out there to look at Chris is taking the opportunity to get into the quasi handle business. I don't want to say that too loud, but because I know it can be frustrating at times. But
it's very frustrating.
Yeah. And with that, we had an interesting piece of media given to us from Mike Miller. He is known as Operator 1975 or as Double Bit Axe Co. on Instagram. I think he's changed his name pretty much everywhere to that, right? If I'm mistaken, but
I believe so.
Yeah, and Mike, as far as Chris and I know, he's probably got as far as axes in the media and the advertisement and the inner working documents and the companies, he's probably got the most.
Oh, by far.
by consciously he has the most. Sure, some guy must own a warehouse somewhere full of the stuff and doesn't realize it, I imagine. But so he gets a lot of cool stuff. And one in particular, because we were doing the handle company, he sent us pictures of so we could show it. And I'm going to say that's IXL Handle Manufacturing Company. And I don't know if Chris has it pulled up, but I do. It was a small pamphlet for advertising their handles to prospective, probably axe makers or tool makers. And they were out of Dexter, Missouri. And I do not have a date of the issuance of this, but at the time that they put it out, it says 45 years of service with satisfied customers. And with that, they had, and look forward to seeing more things like this as we have this type of media to read off of. They had great specifications for axe adze and broad axe handles. And if I'm reading here, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They had 7 grades of their handles. And what do we get now? A and double A, I think, is how most of the manufacturers do it now. I think, does Link even have that grade level anymore? I think they just stamp A on it, and that's all I seem to find. So
yeah, really the only people that are selling a couple grades are like your bigger guys, like House Handle. And
House Handle is an A, and they have an A and a double A. But these guys had 7, and I think, let's take 5 minutes. I figured I'd read them to you for you real axe hounds that like to get into this type of stuff. So they had I'm going to go with IXL or 1XL. I'm really not sure the company name with the font they used back then, but their first and most premium grade is heavyweight, thrifty growth, all white hickory sapwood handle. Shall not have more than 17 rings of annual growth per inch of radius. Shall be free of defects. I like the way they talk to shall. Their second grade of handle, medium.
Just want to back up for a second. Like, what I thought was interesting about that is they limited the amount of rings of annual growth per inch.
That's a good way to branch off. Good idea.
And I always thought the more rings, the tighter the grain, the better the quality. So why would it cap it?
So now somebody, I hate referencing a comment as a fact, but somebody made a mention of how it's found that hickory, let's say for instance, depends less on how many rings of growth you have for strength compared to some other species. But perhaps if you have too tight a growth ring, that handle may become a little too stiff and not have any bend or spring to it.
Well, so that's possible.
Yeah, that's my best guess. I keep getting binged here.
That's 17 rings.
That's a lot if you think about it.
That's a lot. I mean,
yeah, it is.
I wager that most handles today don't have nowhere near that.
No, so you think of the what's that one the French curves there that we got? Some of those had less than 10.
Right, so, and those are ash.
And those are ash too. Yeah.
Ash is predominantly less.
Yes.
Growth rings. I think it grows much quicker. But,
it's a good point.
I just thought that was interesting.
I agree. I think it's absolutely interesting because that's the first time I've ever seen growth rings specifically mentioned in handle selection. Correct. It's really just something I don't think none of us have ever thought about. And their second level of grade was it's called Star, or medium weight, thrifty growth, all white hickory sapwood handles, shall not have more than 22 rings of annual growth per inch of radius, shall be free from defects. So you see, as we step up or we step down in quality, it seems growth rings become less stringent for them, which, normally we would think grain orientation would be the top of that list. It wasn't. In fact, they haven't mentioned anything about the grain orientation, just free from defects, which I'm going to assume is rolled into that. Their third grade of handle is called King, at least medium weight, thrifty growth, all white hickory sapwood handles, shall contain slight hair streaks not to exceed 2 in number, running the entire length of the handle, shall be free from defects. So slight hair streaks. I'd love to know what they exactly meant. I'm going to think maybe Gum lines or sapwood that or heartwood that might have streaked through.
That's what I would. That's what I would assume.
Yeah. And fourth grade of handle, it was called Ajax. Medium weight, thrifty growth, all white hickory sapwood handles shall contain slight iron streaks not to exceed 4 in number, running entire length of the handle. Shall contain slight red heartwood tipped, heavyweight handles. So now you're getting to a level where heartwood might streak through the end of the handle somewhere. And XC is their fifth grade of handle, shall be the same quality hickory as the Ajax, and shall allow 1 tight knot in the eye or 2 tight knots in the eye of the first 1/3 of the grasp end of the handle, the combined diameters of which do not exceed 1/4 inch. Shall contain red heartwood, tipped handles of medium weight. How interesting is that? So they're now getting lower and they're accepting some knots into the handle, which I have seen in vintage handles before.
Correct.
Yeah. I'll take a sip here. Moving down, they have number. I think that's 100. Or is it 109? I can't. The font is a little funny. It's 103 after that.
It looks like it's smudged off.
Yeah, I'll go with 100. Number 100 grade shall be of the same specifications and quality hickory as the XC grade, and containing defects so located that they do not impair the service of the handle. I think we're getting to the point where anything goes.
Yeah.
And number 103, serviceable white hickory sapwood, red hickory heartwood, and mixed hickory heartwood and sapwood, containing defects that are not permitted in the higher grades. No effort is made to manufacture this grade handle and is sold only subject to stock on hand and write in for prices.
So my couple takeaways from this. First off, they didn't mention grain orientation anywhere.
No, they didn't.
Not at all. Nope. My second thing is guys, don't wrap your heads around these 22 rings and 17 rings and don't get caught up into that. Like I know a lot of this information gets put out and then all of a sudden it becomes gospel, and any handle that has more than 17 rings is just garbage. don't get wrapped up into that. And then my third thing is just the pure honesty. You know, you might order a handle from one of the big guys, and I won't pick on anybody in particular, and ask for a hand-picked grade A, and what you're going to get is a 103.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point.
There's just no honesty about it at all. But these guys are straight up, just no effort is made to manufacture this grade handle and is sold only subject to stock on hand. Like it's priceless. You don't get that anymore.
No. So you think of the logistics of, okay, this handle company's pushing out pallets a day of handles. Let's be honest. I mean, Link is still doing that, but they had somebody they had a team of guys going through just checking handle and separating handle grade quality. Yeah. I mean, it was that important. This pamphlet for the IXL company also had great specifications for handles 24 inches and shorter. They're somewhat similar to the others, so I'm not going to read through those, but I'm reading through them and they seem pretty on with the other one. And I had another piece to here's a particular note at the end. Do you have that pulled up too?
Let me see. The 2%. No.
At the very last page, there is a special note, and I've yet to read this, so we'll read it right here on the podcast. Contrary to public opinion, red hickory heartwood will not separate or pull apart from white hickory sapwood. Handles manufactured from young second growth red hickory heartwood or mixed hickory heartwood and sapwood have the same tensile strength as handles manufactured from second growth white hickory sapwood, and are often superior in quality and service to white hickory sapwood handles of medium weight because of their greater resiliency. To reject the use of red hickory heartwood in handles is to needlessly waste our country's natural resources, which are now diminishing at an alarming rate. Therefore, it should be the interest of all users of handles to do their part in conserving the hickory of their native land. And they put a guarantee after that in big, bold letters. We guarantee grades containing red hickory heartwood to give as much service as the grades containing all white hickory sapwood. Handles in which the specifications allow a greater number of annual growth rings per inch of radius. Now, I believe the study done on hickory sapwood was probably done after this, but I find that it's already something that these guys are talking about.
Yeah.
And we'll have guys today continue to rail against a heartwood sapwood mixture. And you know what? I think, not to pick on him, but even in an axe to grind, he says you shouldn't do it. Am I correct? Yeah, go ahead.
He definitely did. I think it was. I think that's where that came from.
You know what? That's quite possible.
I think he started that video's probably started it to the level it's at now. You know, that stuff's been around. You know, people just haven't been paying attention to it.
Yeah, I think that's part of that whole myths and malarkey. It's axe community tools. There's something just gets started and runs away, and therefore becomes fact with no basis. Is really what happens.
I'm telling you from personal experience, by ignoring some of these handles, you're missing out on some of the most gorgeous wood you've ever laid your hands on.
Yeah, my favorite handle, another one of those, why did I sell it, was I made an octagonal that had tons of red streak heartwood through the, and once I octagonal and put all those angles on it, that was one of the best looking handles I ever had.
Yeah.
And I believe it's still being serviced by the guy I sold it to.
They get like better with time too. Like they get the patina on them from your hands and the oil, and don't pass that up. I mean, if the grain's right and you're even if the grain's not right, you know, hang it. Just hang it.
Yeah, just hang it.
Just hang it. You know,
use it for do the practice. Yeah.
You know, and I'm saying this with something to gain in the business of selling high quality, expensive handles. Like I'm telling you, just go buy a handle and get it hung. You know, if you can find a good quality handle or one that suits you, the right shape and size, and don't worry so much about the grain orientation and the heartwood sapwood. You know, I steer away from run out and knots. I think those are the two big things that I steer away from. If the grain changes directions throughout the handle, I'll depending on the length, I'll stay away from that. And then if there's knots in that handle, I'll stay away from that. But other than that, I don't really. It's not that big of a deal.
And you know, there's another piece. I still have the that little blurb about a couple of questions that the Warren Axe and Tool Company answered for a customer that Mike Miller had sent us. And if I read the top of the documents, it says Warren Axe and Tool Company, manufacturers of superior quality axes and tools, Warren, Pennsylvania, USA, January 9th, 1936. And they're addressing a Mr. Whitfield, who apparently wrote in with some questions, and they start the letter with "Dear Sir." Unfortunately, I don't fully have that first paragraph the way the fold in the paper was. But he had asked, looks like 3 questions, and I figure it'd be another great thing to throw into this podcast because some of it references wood and an axe pattern. So one of the questions that he had asked and was answered by Warren Axe and Tool Co. is something about the Hudson Bay pattern. And they stated, we do not manufacture an axe known as the Hudson Bay pattern. And this is Warren Axe and Tool speaking back to this customer. You will find an illustration or outline of all the different patterns which we make in our catalog on page 8 and 9, excuse me. And in any of these axes are the ones which you want, we can make them in our Sager brand, which is here's more axe companies making axe heads for other companies, and there's so much of that back and forth. Another question asked about was, we do not have any stock for making hickory wedges for axe handles, as we do not use hardwood wedges. We find that the hardwood wedge is too hard and will not grip the wood and hold as good as the softwood wedge. Our pine wedges, which we use, the wedge has a tendency, pine wedges which we use. Unfortunately, I'm reading this as the paper is bent. I'm going back a little bit. Hardwood wedge is too hard and will not grip the wood and hold as good as the softwood wedges. or pine wedges, which we use. The wedge has a tendency to work out when made of hardwood. We have metal wedges that can be used together with a softwood wedge, which will hold the handle securely. And then he goes on to address an issue this customer had. We cannot understand why the double bit axe handles, which you purchased from us, did not fit the axes. We buy our axe handles gauged to fit our eyes and have had no trouble of this kind. So you might have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or got a bad batch of handles. But I found the comment about the wooden wedges interesting because that's a very common topic that's brought up, discussed, debated, argued over, and friendships lost.
Yeah.
And this isn't a toot horn. I've had better luck with poplar. I don't like pine as much. I like poplar. It's a little bit harder than pine. A lot less. Obviously, it's not a harder wood like hickory or stuff like that. But like I think we've said in the Myths and Malarkey and previous podcasts, you can make anything work. Yeah. So don't let that discourage you either. I don't know if you had any comments on that or not.
I'd venture to say back then they weren't gluing any wedges in.
Probably not.
So that would make sense with the hardwood backing out.
Yep. And Chris's trick is he likes to use wood glue, and that would solve that problem just like that.
Yeah, it's never coming out.
Yep.
I know too. Like if you sand your wedge too smooth, it will back out.
Mm-hmm.
So unless it's a soft wood.
I run sandpaper through my kerf. I run it from front to back. Creates lines in there. I do the same thing with the wedge. I rough it up that way too. You kind of get a little bit of a locking effect when all those sanding lines kind of just drive into each other. Maybe that's a tip for people, but I think those are cool. We're going to have a lot more on the podcast as topics come up, and Mike Miller has agreed to provide us with some of these documents to enrich our knowledge, and we thank him greatly for that. He don't have to do that, but because there's a passion for the history, he is. So hopefully on the next podcast after the meet, we'll move on to another subject, and Mike Miller will provide a few more of these old documents to find out what was going on and what, Chris and I would agree is the golden age of axe manufacturing. We were going to shoot off into where Chris and I have come to as restorers, the logical step to just making your own handles. I don't know. Do you think we kind of did that already? I mean,
we kind of covered it. Just get the time, do it. My case was, I had bought some handles from Ryan Lombrock, and he makes beautiful handles. But I can't always afford that custom handle. I think his prices are more than fair for somebody who makes them that way. That's definitely not where I'm going, because I would be selling mine if I end up making any handles. They're going to see the same prices. But at the same point, I got a lot of heads that I gotta fill handles with. I can't go that route all the time. So I decided one day just to do it myself. And I just worked out. I took some cues from his stuff and some other things I had, and made my own version of the French curve. And it's not that hard, as Chris will testify. Making handles. I'll tell you what, though. I talked myself out of it for years. I don't know about Chris, but I certainly did. I'm interested in making handles, and I've made very few, mostly just hatchet handles or just playing around. I've never done like a full-size handle yet. I mean, I have the tools and equipment, and I've got a really cool old handle making jig that I bought at an antique store. I should try to bring that to the meet. It's kind of pain in the butt to move around though.
Yeah, but you can't take it apart, I don't think, can you?
No, yeah, it breaks down. It's just wedged together. Oh no, it does have bolts in it. I mean, it could break down.
You bring in your little tripod there, Vice?
I might.
If you can fit it, I would, because I think it's a cool thing to show off for axe guys. But go ahead.
I don't remember where I was going with the whole handle thing.
The direction I was leaning is I talked myself out of it for years. I don't have I don't know what I was telling myself, because it's not hard. And if you had a jigsaw, a cheap $20 jigsaw with a good blade and a small belt sander or just a draw knife, you can do a handle. I mean, you can honestly knock one out in no time.
Well,
And
I'm working on one right now in my garage,
Yep.
and I literally cut it out with a jigsaw.
Yeah.
My main bandsaw is not hooked up right now. I stole the motor off of it from my 2x72 years ago, and I haven't put it back together. But yeah, jigsaw works fine. And then like Roy does use a bandsaw to rough shape his handles, but then he draw knives the whole handle and then sands it smooth. I mean, so it is possible. And you know, the thing is that's how they used to make them. This
Before
handle
the
jig
lathe.
that I bought.
Yep.
Yeah, this handle jig that I bought is literally for that. It's for holding the handle while you use a draw knife to shape it. So it's not impossible. I mean, you can buy a draw knife cheap. Go to an antique store or whatever, learn how to sharpen it, and you're in business.
If you got $30 to spend, you can get one off eBay or less. Yeah.
Yeah. And even now, like I mean, there's plenty of new ones to buy too, I'm sure. But
Mora, right?
Self-Reliance,
Yeah.
huh?
Mora's
Yeah,
got
Mora
one too.
sells
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Self-Reliance Outfitters sells one, or Pathfinder Knife Shop. They have a real nice one for $100. It's a really nice quality draw knife. And then obviously your bigger brands like Lee Valley and stuff like that, you're going to be able to find.
Yeah,
But you can buy an old antique one. I find them everywhere around me. So
yeah, I have two locations that they have like I don't know why I have bought one because they're loaded with them. You know, with that wood selection, for my depends on how fancy you want to go. I'm buying what is it? What is that for? Or 5/4 board. I'm buying 5/4 board for the small hatchet handles, so you don't get a wide foot on it, but with a little bit of ingenuity, you can make a nice, clean, decorative handle with a nice shape on it. And for my short stuff, that's what I'm making out of. Obviously, I'll spend a little more and get a thicker board. If I want to do a full size, I want a nice shapely foot on it. There is a bit of waste, but it is what it is. I'll use it to heat the shop. But I'm lucky. I do have a curious wood section, a hardwood section in my Curtis lumber up here. But there is no hickory. I can either pick from ash, oak, or I can branch out to cherry, birch, and some other things that I can make handles of. But I don't have a hickory source. And the local sawmill that I have around here, they're not cutting any hickory either, or pecan or anything like that. So just, what I make is out of ash. But, and part of the cool thing too is I made my own version of the French curve, and I also ended up scoring a original Adirondack handle, brand new, out of a hardware store in the Adirondacks, just lost in the corner. And Chris was able to get that remanufactured by his handle source. And I thought that, how cool is that? That pattern's it's not made anymore. Yeah.
It was awesome because, going to these handle guys, they're using a lathe. They need to copy it. They're not the handle from scratch. So being able to take those patterns and say, here, make these, it was awesome, and now that resource is available for people to buy. So.
And I think we're going to run there. I know Chris might want to mention something about dust collection.
It is. So, depending on how you're making these handles, I'm using my 2x72 with a 8-inch or 10-inch. I can't remember which one I bought. 10-inch contact wheel. Yeah, and the dust is horrendous.
Yeah, I know. I do the same thing with hardly any collection. Yeah.
Be prepared for that. I'm throwing on a respirator, but it doesn't do much for the rest of the shop. Everything's covered in sawdust. And
I can't wait till that big dust collection I get comes up that my mother's got down in North Carolina sitting there for me. Can't wait to get that. But other than that, well, that's it. Look forward to the next podcast being slightly impromptu and raw from the Axe meet itself. There'll be a couple live streams on the Axe Hounds group. I'll probably throw up one on YouTube. And, of course, the Instagrams. Chris is at Killinger Woodsman Gear and Tool on Instagram. I'm at Adirondack Wilderness Co. We both operate the at Axe Hounds Instagram page and YouTube. And similar searches can find us on YouTube as well. So if there's anything else you want to cap off with.
Yeah, just thanks everyone for your support and continue support. Mike, special thanks to Mike Miller for providing us with some information, and we will definitely have him on more. It will be more of a meet Mike Miller thing.
Yeah, I think that's a whole episode in itself.
Yeah. So, but we're gonna keep going with this, and as long as people are supporting it and enjoying it, we'll keep making these.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll catch you until the next time. Thanks, everybody, and talk to you later.